everybody, it's me, Minu, and it's Sadie because she insists. I've been ignoring her all day. She insists on being part of the video, so she is a part of the video. Today I want to talk about Saving Slaves to Communion. Now, I did talk about Saving Slaves 1. That's kind of the first video I recorded for this channel, so apologies if it's a little choppy or it's a little long. I tried my best. It's a lot of little details in these movies. These movies are very, very good at foreshadowing and introducing people who seem like they're not important, who become important later. And I really like that about the movie, but I also realize that if I pull out every single little detail, it's gonna make these videos super, super long, and I know people don't like that. So I'm gonna try to be quick with the recap for this one, okay? So for context, Saving Slaves 1 takes place in 1981. The second one takes place in 1984. But the movie starts with giving us 1955, a young Buddhaman who is a newspaper journalist at the time, has randomly been picked up by the police and escorted to some random place. He doesn't even know he's going. One of them, in fact, is wearing a mask. He doesn't even know the faces of some of the people who are in the car with him. They drive him out way, way, way out to whoever, where the fuck is, right? Some random place. They drop him off and he goes, and it's called the Bashka Observatory. So they drop him off at an observatory where his friend Heru, a police commander, is waiting for him. He's like, oh, you're the one who had the police kidnap me, a journalist, and bring me out here. Great. Heru shows him inside the observatory what looks to have been some sort of ritual where a ton of bodies from a nearby gravesite, nearby cemetery, have been exhumed. Sadie, your claws are too sharp for me. And they are all bent forward like they are praying to this weird structure in front of them. And Heru tells him, listen, I've been instructed to cover this up. We are going to be moving all the bodies back to where they came from, and we're going to pretend it never happened. And Buddhaman is like, why did you bring me here then? And he's like, because I need you to write an article about it. And he's like, but if I write an article about it, they're going to come after me because they're going to want to know how I know this secret. And he's like, okay, well, just, maybe do it under a different name or create like a conspiracy theory newspaper that posts conspiracy theories. Find a way to get this out to the public without it looking like you know something that you're not supposed to know, to protect yourself. But one of the things that he brings up, that Heru, the police commander, brings up to Buddhaman, is that it doesn't look like these graves were exhumed. It doesn't look like these people were taken out of their graves and then placed in the observatory. Because if you look at the back of their feet, they're all covered in mud and dirt. And if you go outside, you see that there are footprints in the mud and dirt that suggest that these bodies got up and walked into the observatory. But Buddhaman is like, I can't really, wrap my head around this. But he makes the publication anyway. The other thing that's interesting is that the thing that it pans to them, the thing that they are all facing is a portrait of Mortuary. Now, if you remember, Mortuary is the family's mother, the matriarch who died in Saving Slaves 1. And she was also the one whose ghost was haunting the family after she died, though it was later revealed that it wasn't Mortuary, it was something called a Pocong, which imitates or looks like the spirit of your deceased loved one. And I didn't mention this in the last video, but if you recall, the very first scare that happens, not the very first scare, the very second scare. The first scare is Mortuary when she's laying in bed, very ill, can't move. She's furiously ringing the bell at something she sees in the corner of the room that terrifies her. The second scare is when Rini dreams, maybe she doesn't, of going into the room, seeing her mother Mortuary at the window staring out. And remember, their house faces the cemetery, staring out. But when she puts her hand on her shoulder, she realizes that her mother is actually still in the bed ringing the bell. And the person whose shoulder she touched is someone else, someone who looks like her mother, but is not her mother. And so it makes me wonder, this 1955, when Buddhaman discovers this, and it's in the 80s when the story takes place, it makes me wonder if Mortuary was always chosen, or if Mortuary simply looks like who their chosen goddess is. We won't know. Probably not until 3. They don't answer that question in this movie. um, but anyway, that's 1955. That's giving you background on Buddhaman and how he is able to write the articles that does, and how he knows what's happening to Rennie and her family. Now, to give you another recap of what happened in the last movie, the original group of family that we were introduced to was Mortuary the mother, Bari the father, Rama, Bari's mother, so the grandmother of the family, Rennie, the oldest daughter, Tony, the oldest son, Bondi, the second oldest son, and then Ian, the youngest son. In the last movie, Ian was revealed to be Satan's child on his 7th birthday, and he left with the cult. So he's been gone for years. And the family did move into town to stay there, but somewhere between them moving into town and the beginning of this movie, they've moved further out. So originally they just lived in town with everybody else like normal. Now they live in something called the Madara Apartments in Jakarta. And it's super, super isolated, like an uncomfortably amount of isolated, where you're literally like, when a bus or a taxi is coming by, you have to ask them if they're going that way, because it's completely isolated and out of the way, and it's near like a large body of water. And Rennie remarks several times in the story that if there is a storm, the building will flood because it's bad land. And it seems in the beginning like they kind of like were going to build a lot of stuff there, like they were going to develop the land and build a lot of homes, and then they realized that it was a huge flood risk, so the only thing they built was the Mandara apartments. But I'm going to tell you in a second. So basically, over the course of this movie, you have Rennie's storyline, where she has been working at a factory, and her boss is trying to get her into a college because she dropped out of college to take care of her mother, and she has not gone back in the years since because she's been taking care of her family. Because who the fuck knows what Bari's doing? Once again, Bari is completely useless as a father. He just be out and about, leaving the house, coming back. He ain't doing nothing. He ain't bringing no money home. Rennie is supporting this family the whole time, as she was in the previous movie. But Rennie's boss is trying to get her back into college. And she tells Rennie that she has to make a decision. You know, your brothers are grown now. Tony's grown. Bondi's like 14, 15 now. That's technically grown. You can do something for yourself. And so she struggles with that, but eventually decides that she does want to leave and she does want to go back to college and live her life for herself. Because mind you, the Mandara apartments are extremely, extremely cheap. It is poverty on poverty. There is one bedroom and everybody else sleeps in the living room, which is also the dining room, which is also the kitchen. So it's really just 2 rooms, basically. But they live there because they don't have any money, because once again, Bari is useless. But yeah, so she decides, so that's her storyline where she's going. Tony's storyline is the fact that he goes from being that super cool guy with the motorcycle and everybody liked him like he was in the first movie, to now he's kind of like, he looks more like a teenager. Actually, it's kind of funny because he's older now, but he looks more like a teenager. Like he has kind of like acne, and he just seems really awkward. And there's this cute girl at the apartment, and he's trying to like talk to her, but he doesn't really have the confidence to do so anymore. So that's kind of his storyline. He's trying to get the girl. That's his part. Bondi's storyline is that he is the only one who is willing to still talk about the trauma that they went through as a family. Nobody else wants to talk about it. Everybody else wants to put it behind them and say it didn't happen. He knows he had a whole brother that he shared a bedroom with that is gone, that is apparently a spawn of Satan. So it has affected him tremendously. And one of the first things we see him doing is a little bit of ways away from the apartment building, trying to dig up one of the graves because he knows that there was a cemetery there at one point. And Bondi is traumatized about living near a cemetery from the previous movie because he literally grew up near the cemetery, and the cemetery is where all the zombies or the Pakong came out and attacked their family and took their brother. So he knows that there's a cemetery, and he's digging, he's trying to find the tombstones to prove to his friends that there's a cemetery. And his friends also have their own kind of storyline with, their families and stuff. I really like how they develop all the characters, almost all the characters that you get to see in the story. It's very interesting. But I won't talk about the side people. And then Bari, he leave the house, he go to work, he come back, he go to sleep. He somehow he goes to work, but then he don't got no money. So he just be out doing whatever, and Rennie supports the family. So I ain't really been a fan of Bari this whole time. So anyway, so literally things are being put in place, and it reminds me of Hereditary again. Things are being put in place. It establishes that the elevator in the building, because the building's like 14 floors, the elevator in the building is really janky, and there is a like 8-person limit, but everybody just packs themselves in there anyway. So it frequently has moments where it kind of clunks out, but then it comes back on, and clunks out, but comes back on. So everybody just shoves into the elevator. And as they are in the elevator, on the day that Rennie is supposed to leave, Bari and Tony go to get in the elevator. But then Tony randomly sees the girl he likes get off the elevator. And because she doesn't want to be stalked by some creepy dude, she pretends that Tony is her boyfriend, and she takes him away with her, leaving Bari to be in the elevator and Tony not. So then the elevator actually conks out, and it actually breaks down. And this is like, again, this movie really ups the ante when it comes to the gore and the death. And I really appreciate it because it was very well done. But it actually breaks down, and it's like it'll fall, and then it'll stop, and it'll fall, and then stop. And they're all trying to break through to get the elevator door back open. And they managed to get one of the boys, a little 7-year-old boy, out there. But his mother and the other people on the elevator, they can't get out in time. So everybody's screaming. Everybody's trying to find a way out. There's a pregnant woman on the elevator. They're trying to get the doors open so that other people can fit. But the only person who could fit through was a little boy. And at the very bottom, there are these girls who were playing hopscotch. And one of the women who had gotten on the elevator previously had accidentally dropped some change. And the change fell in the cracks of the elevator. So the elevator door just randomly opens, and the girls see all of the coins that the random lady accidentally dropped. Which is a lot of money for the people who live here. And they see it, so they all jump in to try to get the coins. But one of the girls realizes that the elevator is coming down, so she climbs out, and she tries to get the other girls to come out too, but they don't. So the elevator, it comes down, and Tony sees it, Rennie sees it. It's crazy, it's gory, and everybody on the elevator dies except Bari. That's suspicious. Everybody died but him? What did he do? He jump up at the last second and land on everybody else's bodies? Come on now. It's cult shenanigans. Again. There's no way Bari should have survived with nothing but, his leg being a little messed up. It ain't even that messed up. Like, it still works. He doesn't seem that injured at all. And he doesn't even seem that bothered by it. Like, I'm pretty sure at this point, Bari already knows what the fuck is going on, and he's just giving up. So all of that happens. And because all of that happens, obviously Rennie doesn't leave. Like, the boys lost his mother. There's dead bodies everywhere, and they can't bury any of the bodies because of the huge storm that's coming. So you have the building full of bodies in a movie where bodies like to get up and walk around all the time. Watching these back to back, it just made it even scarier. Because you already you're spotting even more shenanigans now because there's more people involved. Before it was just the family. So 1 death, 2 deaths is like, ooh, wow, that's a lot. This is a ton of people dying all at once. It's crazy. There goes Sadie's. But yeah, so Rennie ends up not leaving. She's trying to comfort the little neighbor boy whose mother is dead. The little neighbor boy, also his mother was deaf, so he and his mother spoke sign language. So Rennie had bonded with them over the fact that, her little brother Ian, who is now Satan's child, he's chilling wherever Satan is, was also deaf. So she has a connection to them. And so now we're in a situation where everybody is stuck in the building right before a big storm that's going to keep everybody stuck in the building. A good amount of people are supposed to have evacuated because of the storm. Everybody knew that the storm meant that it was going to flood the building. But so many people decided to stay behind, especially once their loved ones were dead. They had no choice but to stay behind and be with their loved ones until the burial. Really suspicious, right? Everything's coming together, and then the storm hits, and just like you would think, there's massive flooding happening. The flood cuts off the electricity, making everything scarier because now you have people walking around with flashlights and little matches. I think the first and maybe even the second floor, but definitely the first floor becomes completely flooded. And because of the fact that it floods the area where the electrical boxes are, not only is the water dangerous to get to swim in because it's a flood, but it's also going to electrocute you immediately if you touch it. So there's no way anybody's getting out, not even if they wanted to swim their way out. There's a lot of good scares in this again, and again, it develops more of the side characters. But like I said, I'm not gonna talk about the side here, but it develops more of the side characters. And the characters they consistently get separated because the cult loves doing it. They love separating people, and eventually they find, again, two stories. Bondi and his friends they're like breaking into people's homes because they're like, it's really quiet. And this is an apartment building that's usually filled with like dozens and dozens of tenants. And it's extremely quiet. Just because the power's out doesn't mean that you shouldn't hear people. Bondi knows something is wrong and he's trying to figure it out. So they end up breaking into this office where they find a lot of mysterious pictures that show certain weird people when the building was first built. So that shows that this building is something special, but it also shows pictures before the building was built. And lo and behold, they are right next to that observatory and that cemetery where all of those people's bodies were found back in 1955. So Bondi gets his piece of information. Tony also gets his piece of information when he gets separated, ends up on his own little side quest with one of the tenants. And he finds photos of those weird people who used to hang around his mother, who he never knew who they were. And also pictures of his mother, Mortuary. So they're all getting bits and pieces of this information. Rennie's trying her best to hold it all together, but she's also trying to figure out what the fuck her father's doing because he ain't making no money, so he must be doing something shady. And he has this special suitcase that he hides. And there's this whole thing about her trying to find out what's in the suitcase, trying to break into the suitcase. Lo and behold, they finally get in the suitcase. It's a bunch of fingers. It's a bunch of fingers. It tells you nothing, but it's also terrifying. But then when when everybody like reconvenes, I'm talking about the family minus Bari. Bari's he's still asleep right now. Rennie meets up with Tony, Bondi, and all the other people that they are trying to escape with because everybody's being haunted. Everybody's being attacked by ghosts. And they sneak into... They find a special room because Bondi points out that the floors only go so high, but if you look at the building from the outside, there's another floor. But you couldn't find this, but the stairs don't go there, the elevators don't go there, so it had to be a secret room. And they find that secret room together, and lo and behold, in that secret room is Ian. Now, obviously, Bondi's like, fuck no, we got to get away from him. He's Satan's child. He's crazy. And even Tony's kind of scared. But Rennie's like, this is our little brother. And Ian puts on a little act too. He's like, I don't even know what happened to me. I just went to sleep and I woke up and I'm here. Like, well, he says it in sign language, but I don't speak sign language. And Rennie insists on bringing him with her because she's like, this is my brother. We need to stick together as a family. We need to take care of him. Which I don't know what the fuck's going on with Rennie. She's not being very smart in this movie. She's very horror protagonist of her to be like, let's bring Ian with us. Whereas Bondi is like, I'm not going anywhere near him. He is the devil. He is the devil. How many times I gotta tell you that he's the devil? But she brings him with them anyway. They run into Bari and they confront him about the fingers. And he doesn't really answer, but he's like saying, I wanted to protect you. I was trying to protect you. And he ends up admitting the fact that he was the one who got Mawarni involved with the cult in the first place. But he wanted to protect the children. He didn't want them to die or be taken by the cult. When he sees Ian, he completely freaks the fuck out. Because again, he knows that Ian is the spawn of Satan. Everybody knows this. Bondi knows this. Tony knows this. Bari knows this. What the fuck are you doing, Rennie? What's going on? But yeah, everything was crazy. They all get split up. Again, it's also pitch black darkness. They all get split up and they all get attacked by the cult individually. And they wake up. Well, they don't really wake up. But they are brought to the room on the floor, on the secret floor, because the cult decides to come down and they're like, yeah, we're all going to grab you now. They bring them into the secret floor where Ian is directing them with his special demonic sign language, which is something that was foreshadowed in the sense that the other little boy found a book that had sign language in it, that it was like, but it wasn't regular sign language. It was something else. So he can actually understand because it's the demonic sign language. He's doing a demonic sign language. They put some leaf in Rennie's mouth that makes her hallucinate and think that she's actually in college at a new city. And at first she's super happy about it, but then she starts to remember that she's not supposed to be there, that she never actually left. And so she spits the leaf out and she's slowly but surely trying to get up, because they bring Bari out and they tie him up with some horses. I don't even know where the fuck the horses came from. Tie him up with some horses and they turn him into force, you know? And so they're preparing to sacrifice the entire family except maybe Rennie. I feel like Ian trying to get her to be like caught up in that other world was a way of like sparing her from what was happening. But Bondi and Tony are tied up and they're ready to sacrifice the whole family before Wisnu, I just remember his name, the little boy whose mother was deaf, who speaks sign language. He comes in, and because he knows that demonic sign language, he is able to counter what Ian is doing and stop them from completing whatever ritual that they are completing, because Ian was literally directing them with his sign language. So Wisnu pushes Ian out the way and he undoes it because he understands the language, which allows Rennie to get everybody to try and escape. Now, again, they're still flooded in there. So it's like, how are they going to, escape? How are they going to get out? Well, just like what happened in the last movie, Budaman just shows up and he's got a boat and he just shows up, and them and their friends, the ones that are survived, of course, hop in the boat and they drive off. I want to criticize them for doing the exact same ending, but I feel like I enjoyed the journey a lot more. So let me tell you what happened with Budaman. So I've already told you what happened in 1955 when Budaman was first turned on to the fact that there was a secret, weird cult that was doing some stuff. Hello, Sadie. Hello, Sadie. I'm talking about Satan's sleeves. Can you move? I love you. Go somewhere. Okay. So we already know about that part, but I love you too, Sadie. But prior to the events of what happened that day with the storm and everything, he receives a letter. He receives a box in the mail. And the box is from his friend Haru, the police commander. Haru has self-terminated, and he sent a bunch of documents and pictures to Budaman to basically tell him what he's learned about the cult and how they're moving, and that they're about to move again. And so he sends him all of these pictures and everything showing the different rituals and everything that he's collected, and lets him know that something's about to happen at those apartments. And who is at those apartments? Rennie and her family. So he knows that he has to help them, but nobody will take him to the apartment because of the storm. They know that area is going to flood, so no taxi, bus, or anything is going that way. So he's struggling, trying to figure out how can he get this information to them to let them know what's about to happen. So that kind of is a side plot that happens, but that's how he ends up showing up right in the nick of time to save everybody, right? The other thing that gets explained once Budaman is involved, and he's like, because he's the exposition guy again. Remember, Budaman's the one that's got to tell everybody what's happening, is that Mortuary, or what we think is Mortuary, who we think is Mortuary, is actually someone called Ramanam. This is a weird little thing. So the cult was worshiping Ramanam, and Ramanam doesn't look like Mortuary, Mortuary looks like Ramanam, because in 1955, at the time that they had their last ritual, Bari persuaded Mortuary to be involved with the fertility cult because they had been struggling to have a child and it was very important. So she gets involved with this cult so that she can have children, but it also helps elevate her to stardom. Because within her music, this is something that is lightly hinted at in the first movie but doesn't pay off into the second movie. Her music also contains secret satanic messages that are used by the cult. And so when there are people involved who are in the cult, you find that there's all of this information. Like they listen to Mortuary's music. They play Mortuary's music all the time because of the fact that within her music is the secret cult ritual messages. Rennie, who is the oldest of them, said that Mortuary actually didn't always look the way that she looked. Her looks changed when she became famous. So that's something that she wouldn't have thought that would be important. Hello, Sadie, again. That's something she wouldn't have thought would be important until now, because of the fact that Mortuary's image was changed to look like the goddess of this cult. And in exchange for her joining this cult, they gave her children and they gave her fame. So going to my point about the last movie, I think that because she was trying to avoid sacrificing any of her children, at some point she must have pissed the cult off. They made her sick. Whatever illness she had, they made her sick and made her eventually die so that they can do the ritual that they needed to do by taking the children. And I think that that's what happened. It's also revealed that the reason that Bari had all those fingers was because he was trying to break the contract that he and Mortuary had formed with the cult, because now he realizes, hey, I formed this bond with this cult. I formed this contract. All my kids are going to die because they were going to sacrifice everybody. And so in order for him to break the contract, he was told he would have to kill 1,000 people. That's not easy, but he gets a sniper rifle and literally would go around killing people with tattoos. It's mentioned at the beginning that there is a sniper killer who is killing people with tattoos because tattoos in I guess Jakarta is associated with being like a gang member or a criminal. And so in his mind, he was like, it's not bad, I'm killing criminals. But he didn't kill enough people in time, which is why the ritual still happened the way it happened, and they still killed him. And yes, the government and the police are aware of that fact, but it's kind of like, okay, but if you're killing, criminals, we don't care that much. So it was kind of like an easy layup for him. But was there 1,000 criminals in Jakarta for him to kill? Probably not. Probably not. And if Sadie could decide what she wants to do with my lap. Budaman also tells them, setting up for movie number three, like I said, Budaman also tells them that this is all part of a bigger plan. And at the end, so remember how I said in the last video that there's this ending with these people that get introduced and they're not important? They weren't important. They show up again, just like the last movie. Budaman saves them, and then these two people show up again. This time they show up and it is revealed as they do their little dance. They talk a little bit cryptically. It doesn't really matter. We already know that there's a bigger plan in place. They do their little dance, but then the camera pans into this image of them where they were at the 1955 Bandung conference, and they looked the exact same. They had not aged since 1955 or maybe longer. So the plot is setting these two people up, this woman and this man, as these kind of supernatural beings who have been alive this whole time, and they've been watching everything that's been happening this whole time, but they're just watching. They are only a part of the cult to watch what is going on. They don't actually participate in the things that the cult does, which is something that they say that they're, concerned. The cult might realize that they're not actually with them, but they don't actually participate in anything. They are just there to watch and see what happens because they have their own plan and they're on their own side. They're not on the cult side. They're not on the family side. And so they're going to be more fleshed out in the third movie whenever that comes out. But I will say, as a sequel, I will say this movie was better than one. primarily because of the fact that they had more people involved, more stories. They had a better set. Like the building was very, very scary, very atmospheric. Having more people involved in the story means having more storylines, which means having more scares, and making you feel more connected to the people who actually like die in this movie. So I felt that it was done way, way better than the first one. But it also is like, okay, but the first one needed to happen for the second one to happen, right? And just like the creator of the movie, the cult has their grand plan of why they need to do things the way they do things. So they gave Mortuary children in stardom in exchange for her basically becoming their goddess. And then when they were ready for their harvest, they sacrificed her and took one of the kids. And then a few years later, they came back to take the rest of them. But it's all a part of their bigger plan. And it also shows that these people are they're above the law. So these people obviously have ties to the government and the police, which is why Haruk, the police commander, could not do anything about it. He had to cover it up. He was instructed from high up to cover it up. The fact that they built those buildings and made sure no other buildings were built in that area and nothing was built on top of the graves so that they could do their thing. The fact that they, caused the elevator to crash, killing a bunch of people and setting their plan in motion. So that they could have these people rise from the dead to do what they needed to do. The fact that they had Ian there probably the whole time. And Ian also never aged, just like the two characters at the end. He never aged. He was 7 4 years ago and he still looks 7. So I think it's I think it's a really, really good movie. And I was very happy to watch it because the first one I watched, I was like, okay, I see what you're trying to do here. I'm giving you your props, I'm giving you your respect. But with this one, I was very much glued to the thing. Like people were messaging me. Usually, sometimes you watch a movie and you're like trying to texting people and you text them back. This movie, I did not text anybody back. I had to finish the movie. I didn't care how long it was. I was thoroughly invested in all of the characters because I didn't know who was going to die. I mean, if they had no problem taking Ian or killing the grandma or killing the mom, then they had no problem killing the dad. The only person who I thought would survive would be Rennie because she just gives me main character energy. But everybody else was kind of up for grabs. Like everybody else could have got killed. And there was people who they made you care about them as a character and then they died. Like you wanted to see them survive and they didn't. So I really, really appreciated how this movie was done. And I think it's a great watch. Like I said, I just gave you a quick recap. And I know I spoiled a lot of stuff, but there's so much. Even though the movie ended the same exact way that the first one ended, I enjoyed the ride. I feel like a lot of movies recycle some of their plot points and you're kind of like, oh, really, this again? I really enjoyed the journey of watching this movie, regardless of the way that it ended, regardless of the twists and turns and all of that stuff. Because I enjoyed the characters, I enjoyed their storyline, I was invested in what happened to these people. And so I think it's a good ride. And I definitely recommend that you guys check it out. Even if you already know how it's going to end, I think you're still going to enjoy the journey, the ride of how this movie plays out. I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.